For coming back and for connecting again to our, this should be like day 6, right?
Good morning.
How are you? Can you hear me, Cyril? Good morning,
Morning.
Casper.
Yeah, loud and clear. Good morning, everyone. I hope
Morning.
everyone has the chance to manage and to access the application, and you don't have any other issue, maybe except performance. All right, so if you can maybe send thumbs up or say something, yeah. If you people who are still facing issue, maybe it will be good to say it.
Good morning, Anna.
Good morning.
Actually, it's good afternoon, no, for most of us.
Okay.
We have, so it's 42 people. I see the number is growing, so maybe we wait, Cyril, for a couple of minutes while I'm preparing the video as well.
Yeah, so I don't see anyone expressing the need to receive support or facing issue now. As I said, if someone has issue, please let us know so we can contact you
Well,
later.
if I can say no issues on the exercise, but sometimes I feel that they could be a little bit improved for the clarity of the sense, meaning sometimes they are not clear, let's say, at first sight, and they're required to be read one more time. But it's just, fine-tuning, I'd like to say. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Stefano, for your input.
Thank you, Stefano. If you can maybe by email send us what is the exercise and how it was confusing, that will help us a lot to maybe elaborate better for the
Yes,
upcoming session.
well, at the very end, it's no, at the very end they are completed. So, but it's probably personal. But let's say that there could be sometimes.
Yeah.
I will tell you later specific examples so we can fine tune. Okay.
Yeah, that will really help us because now that there are so many eyes looking at them, it's
yes.
very
So different eyes, different perception, obviously.
Okay.
Thank you. In any case.
Thank you. All feedback is very welcome always, and that's the first time we do this training. Also, first time we do this type of training in this distance mode. So it's very important. Good morning, Valentina.
Good morning.
How are you? So I think we are good to start. We have Casper and also we have Dinesha again connected. So welcome back, Dinesha. The idea for today is to first do a quick recap. We will share again another nice video that our colleagues from UCS and Trey particularly prepared for us. And then we will do a quick recap of what we saw during the last days. And the idea and the main topic for the day is entity priority project demand. So remember there were several questions about other type of demand that cannot be, let's say, forecasted based on historical consumption. So this is what we're going to see today, for a part of it. And we will also see master data elements for you to read and then to see how some things can be also maintained. So I think, Cyril, if we are good to start because we have already 50 people. So, and it's 12 here. I think I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to open a video. One moment, please. So you can also confirm that you can see my screen. And again, this is, as I like to say, this is a kind of refresher and also to activate your brains, even though it's already in the afternoon. So hopefully our brains are fully working. So I think I didn't activate the sound. 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. So I'm going to play this video. This one is it's a video about automatic cleansing that we saw a couple of days ago, right? So yeah, let me play it. Remember, we started with a video of historical data, and then this one is automatic cleansing. And now we will go through the end-to-end process to give us a quick refresh.
Hello,
In this video, we'll be explaining automatic cleansing for demand planning. So what is automatic cleansing? Cleansing of data is important for accurate demand calculation. It can be done in two ways: manual adjustment of historical data and automatic adjustment by the system, which is called automatic cleansing. Let's begin by defining few terms.
So here we have some examples of time series, right? We saw that during the previous day, but remember that the trend is a continuous time series in which the values constantly increase or decrease. Seasonality, we also saw that with Valentina, where there are increases or decreases during the time series with certain frequency. And then we have irregular, that we also define as some examples as intermittent, but in this case continuous. Irregular, actually in this context, is a continuous time series with high volatility but not specific pattern. So when we don't find a trend or seasonality. Here you have another three examples that are particular based on the different time series. We have intermittent. This one, I think we also saw it with Valentina. So there are time series that contain intervals of various lengths between the subsequent days or consumption dates. So as we saw also some example during the other day, that there were some values here, there were some missing values there, etc. Lumpy, that are intermittent time series in which relative large deviations can be observed. This is a bit more advanced compared to what we saw. And then continuous, which is it's continuous or almost constant when there are there is not so much variation, right? You see that it's represented as a constant line. I think this one we explain as constant rather than.
Now let's look at how automatic cleansing takes place using a three-step process. Hope you found this video useful. Please visit emoji.un.org for more information.
Well, sorry, because I think the bottom bar was hiding some of the text at the end. Anyway, this video is for you. We will share it so you can play it at any time you want later. And yeah, I think there is a microphone open, so maybe just please check. Hello, Himanshu, good morning. I see you are connected. So yes, as I said, that these videos that we are that the team is producing, we will be sharing them. I mean, we are sharing them daily, and also we will put all this material in one repository that we have set with all the materials from the trainings for your easy reference. And for the time being, we are giving you material day by day. But then don't worry, we are putting all this together in the same place. Please check your microphone. I think there is, or Cyril, if you can find who has the microphone open. So let me share now the screen and start with the topic of the day. I'm going to open the presentation for EPP, and we will do first small recap before entering into the content. So I'm going to mute you all, hopefully. All right. So I hope you can still hear me. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. So let me share the screen again. And yeah, sorry. This is the email and this is the presentation. So let me hide this and let's start. All right. So yeah, the main topic of the presentation is not too long. So this should give us enough time as well to perform the demonstration and also practicing today. And the topic of the day is the entity priority project demand. But let's review together a bit where we are and where we are going to find ourselves a bit better. So we started. This is the end-to-end, let's say, process that Valentina was sharing these days, and we started with historical. Apart from the initial overview, we started with historical data, right? The template that was used to review the historical consumption and to make adjustments. This we already did it, and I hope most of you have been able to complete the exercise. And if not, of course, you can always contact us and we will try to assist. Then also through the presentation that Valentina provided, we understood the concept of classification, which is a classification of time series. So the system will analyze historical data and will classify the content as will classify the time series as constant, intermittent, continuous, with seasonality, etc. We already saw that. I hope you remember. Then, as the video was mentioning, we went through the template for automatic auto cleansing. Well, the system was reviewing gaps and outliers to prepare the data for future statistical forecasts. Do you remember all this? I hope it's not so far in time. Then I believe yesterday, I think it was yesterday, when we saw segmentation, product segmentation. That was another important step that the process was, the solution was performing, or the system was performing, to classify products as ABC in terms of, let's say, importance for you to prioritize, and also as X, Y, Z based on their volatility. So these 4 points we already saw, and after segmentation, we discussed yesterday together the statistical forecasting with the different forecasting methods, this cross-cone thing and exponential smoothing, and how the system will generate a best fit, and etc. So I hope you agree with me that we have covered these 5 points so far. And now it's time to look at the other side of the chart, where we have the gross demand and we see entity priority project. So we are going to focus today on entity priority project. Sorry that I left these yellow marks on the slide. So we will focus on entity priority project today. But if we look at what we were doing these days, right, and let me use this time to recap. And I hope you can also help me to remember. This is like all the steps from all the process and template steps from, let's say, high-level overview. But I would like you to help me a bit to remember what we have been doing. Now, on the full process that we have seen for the last few days, could you please tell me what is the first step? And also I need Cyril and Valentina help to let me know if the people are replying. So what would be the first step for the process from the very beginning, right? Before let's say, using the historical template, how does this process start from the very end, from the very beginning? Could you please reply, or also unmute yourself and just reply? I think it's good to create a bit of mess now in the first 10 minutes of the class. It's not a problem. What is the very first step? How do we start the process? Please, we need someone brave to start, to break the ice. Maybe someone from UNGSC. Salvatore.
Well, I was thinking to the historical data retrieved from ECC.
Exactly, that is the very first step. I don't know if you had the chance to read it because the animation showed, but yeah, consumption history.
No, I swear to God, no.
No, David, not yet. So Salvatore said it before, so credit to him.
Okay, good to know. So yeah, very good. That is very first step, consumption history from Omoya production, and that is an input to something else, right? So someone else can tell me where does this history goes. How can we use this historical data? Well, this one is very easy, right? Maybe I can reply it myself. because it goes to the historical data template, right? That's its consumption history. But now, after we have this output goes where? I need someone else from another entity, maybe someone from MINUSMA. So the adjustment that we do in the historical data, it has an output that goes where? What do we do with this data? After we review consumption history and we analyze and adjust, as you can see on the slide, what happens next?
Final history.
Final history, something like that.
Yeah, so the final history is the name, the key figure. Yeah, exactly, the key figure. And then this final history is an input to what? We need someone else, someone from maybe UNSOS.
Classification.
Exactly. So the classification is done by the system in order to start what process? Maybe someone from UNON, if you are connected. After classification, what happens after classification in the system? Classification is a process that is run to classify your time series. Of course, classification could even happen before historical data, but after, if we adjust, we want the system to classify properly. Now, this classification is the input for the next step in the process. Do we have someone from UNON connected?
Data cleansing.
Data cleansing. And this is a process that is done by the planner or is automatic?
Automatic.
Very good.
Data cleansing.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Very good. Thank you. So yeah, actually the template is called auto cleansing. So, and this auto cleansing will generate as an output the cleanse history, which is the name of the key figure, the name of the field, right? So these, let's say, boxes want to represent a particular key figure within the template. These, let's say, ovals represent better the, let's say, the templates and the numbering. So this is what we saw like in the first 2 days. But what do we do with the cleanse history? Sorry, cleanse history. Now I need someone from UNSO or UNSCOL. What does the system does with the cleanse history, and what else we need? Yeah.
Statistical forecast.
Very good, the statistical forecast. And together with the statistical forecast, together with the cleanse history, the system needs something else that is also important for us to prioritize the management of the, or the, let's say, of the process of the cleanse history. So what else do we need? Yeah? Segmentation. Very good. So we have the segmentation. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we have the cleanse history and the segmentation, and this goes to the statistical forecast. It was what we saw yesterday. And this will generate our final statistical forecast that goes to gross demand. And we will see another template in the future, I mean, in the following days, that is called gross demand, where we will see our final statistical forecast. But today, and then apart from the gross demand, apart from the statistical forecast, I mean, we have other two components that are added to the gross demand. We have the equipment or additional demand, and we have entity priority project demand. So today we are going to focus again on this portion here. Okay, sorry to make the long story out of these 2 slides, but I think for those who replied, it's good because it makes you think, and for those who are still listening, it's good to see the end-to-end process.
Okay. David, just yes. a quick question. Can we consider this EPP entity priority project demand as also as an override, which we saw earlier, where you had a column after you have established a statistical trend or the consumption pattern? There was a column.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you have.
Oh, I think I lost the sound.
Did you hear me?
Can you speak again, please?
Yeah, I mean, this EPP entity priority project, can we consider that also as an overriding data? If you notice in the earlier, after the completion of the trend analysis with the continuous as well as intermittent, there was an area where you have left to as an override. You know, if you are not happy with that amount that the system have produced, there was a space that you have kept to add to increase or to decrease the amount which is appearing there.
I understand the question. All right. not like that. You have in the statistical forecast, you have this override field, that the override field is its purpose is to, let's say, modify based on your professional knowledge and your experience the statistical forecast itself that is applicable to products where you have, let's say, a regular consumption for the last time, or you have some historical consumption, and then you are modifying the forecast. This is one thing, which is a forecast based on historical consumption. For entity priority project demand, and we are going now to explain what is a project, is for planning demand where it's not, where knowing the consumption history will not tell you what is going to happen, let's say, per se. For example, if you are building a new hospital in your mission, you might you need to plan your gross demand as well. You will need to know also your net demand. You will need to plan your acquisition. But this is not based on historical consumption because it's a project. You are building a hospital. If you're doing a vaccination campaign after they will hopefully find this vaccine for the coronavirus, that you might have a project to have a vaccination campaign, or you might have a particular project for to improve security in your entity. But these projects are new, basically are new projects where or something that you are planning for the next years, whose demand is not determined by the historical consumption trend or seasonality. The demand of the project is determined by the project plan itself and by the project manager. That would say in the first year, we're going to build this part of the hospital and we will need these materials or we will need these services, right? So let's go now to the, if it's okay with you, let's go now to define what is the entity priority project, and I'm sure it will make more sense. But see that this arrow is not part of the statistical forecast, let's say, flow. This is a separate arrow, okay? Is that clear? That at least at this point, even though we might not agree yet on what is an entity priority project, it's important for me that you confirm that you understand that this is not part of the statistical forecast process. Statistical forecast process started with historical consumption review, automatic cleansing, and then the forecasting, including segmentation, etc. But this is a different branch. You see, it's not connected. Forecast goes to gross demand. That's it. Now we have two more, let's say, branches or processes that will add information. I will add demand to the gross demand. Is that clear? Cyril, could you please confirm? Is that clear?
Yeah, it is clear. Yeah, because okay. It is an override, but it is coming after the gross demand, so it will be outside the other flow from the statistical forecast.
But more than an override, it's if I may, it's an addition.
Addition, right?
Yeah. An addition. Yeah. Okay. Because when I use the word override, I'm thinking about let's say editing what you have here. No, it's an addition. You might have 5 elements coming from the statistical forecast. You might have 5 bricks for maintenance reason based on historical consumption, but you might have to build also a hospital, and then you are adding more bricks. Okay. So we will focus again on entity priority project demand. Thank you for your question, and I appreciate when you are asking me like with your voice, because it helps me get a better feeling of what is going on. So again, this is another view of the same thing to insist. We have gross demand has 3 components. Final statistical forecast, additional demand that we will see, I think, tomorrow, and entity priority project demand, which is the purpose of the day, and this is why we have a flag here. So, 2 important things about entity priority projects. So I think 3 points. So entities undertake projects of various size and nature. So I cannot tell you this is a particular priority project. This is, I can give you some example, but eventually it's the entity that based on the importance will determine and will classify this project as an entity priority project. So this is determined by the entity. based on the importance and the considerations of the operations of the entity, etc. And then if it's classified as an entity priority project, recording of all products, meaning by products, goods, so materials and services, all right, are required to be tracked. So we need to record, we need to plan demand for products if they are classified as an entity priority project. So important elements to remember from this slide. Entity priority project, it's a classification based on the entity itself. So your entity will determine if this is a priority project or not, if it's an important project for the entity. And then if it's like that, then remember that goods and services have to be recorded, and then we need to perform the demand plan for that. Okay, so two important elements here. The priority is determined by the entity, so it's not me who can tell you this is your entity priority project. We can have some examples, right? Because there may be projects that are managed and they are part of the concept of the operation in peacekeeping, for example, or SPMs. Some examples might be constructions, right? Like, as I said, these assets under construction that are, or building a new camp, for sure, building a new camp would be an entity priority project. But those are very big examples. But there might be other examples that would fit better, and you need to think about them in your entity. Maybe later, I might ask some of the entities to give me examples of what you consider entity priority projects in your entity. For other entities, there might be like conference, for example, could be another example. Now, could be a typical example for UNGSC or other entities where we have conferences. Okay, so this may be project that the management of the entity agreed as part of the concept of the operation, or in other entities, there might be significant events that could be classified as that. These two icons are just to represent two examples, just for you to get an idea of what it's, to have a common understanding of what is an entity priority project. But now I'm going to show the list of project types that we will even see later in the system, but also to give you an idea of what we mean by entity priority project. I think some of you already called priority projects or mission priority projects, but now it's more general for these four entities. So we have, for example, construction projects, healthcare or vaccination projects, gender balance projects, some other related to water treatments, conferences. But here on the left side, you see the full list of project types that we have right now in the solution. If you think there is any missing project type, you can also send an email to us, to Casper, for example, so to the project team, and they will review it. But as a general example, we have constructions, energy management, environmental, gender initiative, healthcare, human resources, this long list. Okay, new constructions, waste or water conservation projects, etc. But eventually, as I said, in the mission or in your entities, you might run some projects. If they are classified as priority projects and they are very important, it makes sense to plan the gross demand and the net demand and have a proper acquisition plan, right? Because it's very important. So why to capture then the EPP demand? So basically, the first point is clear. We have been discussing this since the very beginning. It should be part of our gross demand, and then it's needed for calculating the net demand. And then this will also impact on the acquisition plan as well, right? But as well, in terms of project, the project might reoccur, no? For example, if we are building a new building, or if we have a new, I don't know, a new tower or a new security fence that we are, let's say, building, we might do it for this entity, for this camp, but then it might happen again in a different camp, right? So tracking and having this data in the system as of what products and what quantities were used or what was planned, etc., and what it was consumed as well, it might be very useful in the future for the planning purposes. And then also just to let you know that the solution have the capability to capture demand for multiple multi-year projects. Of course, projects are not completely aligned with budget cycles, right? So you might have a project, and I think the solution is capable of managing projects as up to 5 years. Okay, is that correct, Casper or Dinesha? You want to add something at this point of the presentation about the nature of these entity priority projects and how they are applied in the mission? Casper and Dinesha, are you there?
Yes, David. The reason that we brought in the entity priority projects was the idea of capturing the demand for reoccurring projects, because we wanted to build that information. We know that today entities undertake, or mostly missions undertake, projects that takes place for a couple of years. What happens is this data in terms of these projects is sort of lost in the remainder of the consumption data. So the idea was to separately capture it. So next year or another couple of years time, you're undertaking the same project, you have the data in the system in terms of what materials and services, what products that you used in what quantities, and was it that you needed the products at the beginning of the project, at the end of the project. And another point that we also doing is, like David said, is you can capture this demand beyond your budget planning. Is you can capture it for up to 5 years. But what happens is, because you capture the project demand in monthly buckets, when it's time to submit for budgeting purposes, it'll take a snapshot of that period that's relevant for the budget, and then you'll be able to submit it. That's the idea behind it as well. One of the things which we haven't introduced as of yet is the functionality that eventually, say for example, for this coming year, I saw there was a chat that UNSO is building some kind of an observation post. Come next year, these goods and services that you used for this observation post is embedded in the consumption history. What we are trying to do is, come next year, it'll automatically be removed from the consumption history, and it can still be shown as part of a project-related demand. So you'll be able to see the difference between what was needed for your regular operations versus projects. That's all I want to add, David.
Okay, thank you, Dinesh. Thank you. So yeah, this is okay. 1 second, I think. All right.
Dinesh, if you can also, there was a question about real estate and WBSC, and I think that's a good point to clarify between how we look at our asset management versus how we look at a construction project.
Yes, this is a good thing, Imasho, that you raised. I've been chatting also with Gisela about it, and I just mentioned also this is part of the project item, and then they will see it in the equipment. You know, the phone element is one of the important attributes, right? Depending if you're using a set of under construction or other materials. So yeah, Dinesha, up to you.
Yes. So in terms of projects, there's a couple of things. I think David is going to get into it. We have what we call a project header, where you're able to capture what is the name of the project, what is the project type, who is the beneficiary, who are the partners that you're cooperating with. Some key pieces of information that you don't have to track it in a spreadsheet necessarily, so you have the tool to track it. And an item level, we are capturing to say, what are the materials and services we are using? And are we funding it through an internal order, or are we funding it through an WBS element? This is to sort of capture the funding component of it. In terms of real estate projects, I mean, we know that it's captured in the system, but if you want to track it separately as a project, that's what the tool allows you to do. Gisela, did I answer your question?
All right.
Sorry, yes, you did. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me continue, and then we will go into that details. I just wanted to do a break also to have different voices saying, adding information that I think it helps. So some other important points about entity priority projects, right? So requirements for existing or new projects are to be determined outside of the DPSMP solution prior to data entry info. There is a typo here, sorry. this bullet point that seems not so important is essential for you to understand. What you were doing with historical data and statistical forecast was actually planning or let's say forecasting future consumption regarding some materials and services that you are consuming often. In the case of the entity priority project, the requirements that are determined outside the PSMP solution means that for your project, you have to do your own plan and, let's say, to determine or to estimate when materials or service are going to be consumed for the next, let's say, 2 years, if we are talking about this rolling plant, or late or further if the project goes beyond, which means that after you have a proper plan, so that demand plan itself is done not in the tool for the project. You have to do the business of the planning demand is based on the project phases and how the different tasks are going to be connected and when you will need your materials. And once you have this information, you would enter it in the DPSMP solution. In this sense, this is different to what was happening with the forecasting. The forecasting was the system telling you, okay, I'm based on these statistical estimations, I think you will consume 10,000 bricks in the next 2 months, and you will consume 2,000 bricks in July because of this and that, based on consumption. Maybe the bricks is not the best example. We have to think about masks. Based on this, as we did the first day, based on the consumption that you had for the last 2 years and the trend that we are seeing in the last 3 months, this is your forecast of mask consumption. When it comes to projects, the system cannot do this for you. It is planned by you, and then you enter it into the system because it's based on your project and how you plan to make it happen, right? So the entity priority project demand is a forecast of required goods, which is not based on historical data. I think this point you are already very aware of it because the first questions in the training came about it. So it's rather based on the evaluation of the project outcome and timeline as they will be procured and consumed, especially for the project execution. Now, that's the word I was trying to find. For project execution, you will plan for it, and then you will need to enter this into the system. And the system will help us because once we enter our, let's say, demand plan for the project, the system will integrate this demand to the gross demand and will connect our consumption, our planned demand with the other components of the gross demand, additional demand, and also the forecasted demand. So you enter it, and then the system will add it to your gross demand, and you will be able to manage it as a whole. And then, of course, it will help you for the net demand and subsequent steps. Now, the maximum planning horizon that we have is 5 years, but that is, I think, something more specific that we can discuss even later when we talk about the start date and end date. Now, is this clear? Is it clear that the demand planning business for project is not only what you do entering data? You have to plan for your projects in advance, which means you have the local planner has to do an extraordinary planning work, forecasting the consumption that is expected to happen because of this particular project. And then this can be added as a gross demand. Is that clear? Cyril, Dinesha, you want to add something?
Yes. So there's a question on the chat that says, could we use a BOQ or a bill of material? Yes, that functionality is supposed to be built in phase 3. So the idea is if you have a BOQ for a camp, I mean, we did get some sort of a bill of material from UNGSC that's usually used when a camp is built. Yes, if you have something like a bill of material, the functionality will be introduced in phase 3, where you could actually maintain a bill of material and bring that on to the DPSNP solution and then plan it. But the key here is a lot of bills of material that we've seen in terms of what we've received. It needs to include an Umoja material ID or a PID. It cannot be a text item, or it cannot be an item, item that describes the material but not being a PID. So the key is it has to have a PID, and if you have a bill of material, yes, we are bringing on that functionality. And yes, the entity priority projects or the mission priority projects is a function that we assume that the technical sections or the service delivery sections would enter, and then together with acquisition planning, it's something they can review as an element that goes into gross demand.
Okay, thank you for adding that and then addressing the questions that we are getting that are very important for this topic.
One other things, and I think also Denisha, I don't know if you miss it. So I think about asking if the EPP from previous year will be included in the historical consumption.
Yeah, so Herbert, to answer your question, say if your goods, for a project you issue out goods, and if you issue out goods, for example, it is captured in the consumption history. What we have not done as of yet is to remove that component out of consumption history and show it in the following year as a previous EPP. So the first year you go live with the tool, you would enter a demand for EPP. Come the following year, in the tool itself, we should be able to separate that EPP from the consumption and show it as a separate consumption that was used for projects. That functionality hasn't been introduced, but we've discussed it with SAP and we will include it so it doesn't kind of muddy the waters in terms of consumption water, and it's separated out. So we will introduce that functionality.
Maybe I can just hook on here, because I think that's a very critical question here. I mean, let's just take as an example prefabs, which is a very common, commodity in our peacekeeping environment, and we will collect historical consumption data. What prefabs we have issued over, each period. So we will see this, and we'll probably have some pretty good continuous supply data, consumption data on prefabs. But I mean, a prefab is not something that I consume on a non-project basis. You know what I mean? There's a project to build a camp, there's a project to build a hospital, there's a project to build a police station or whatsoever. So they're all projects. So if I remove all this project data, we'll end up with zero consumption because they're all project, driven. So I think it's a fundamental question that an entity then needs to decide, am I going to use only historical consumption, whether this was from a specific project or from continuous demand from other sources? I don't even know what example to give. Or we'll just remove it and only use the EPP. Because most of the consumption of regular commodities is project-based. I build a camp, so it's a project, and it will take me a year, 2 years to build this camp, and I have all sorts of items on there. I mean, basic maintenance of these camps, okay, there is some commodities that we use, oftentimes not much, because a lot of the facility maintenance services are now outsourced, so it will be not part of goods consumption. So I think that is something that we have to look at very, very carefully.
Yes, I mean, I think.
Sorry, can I just add on? This is Gisela. I just wanted to add on to what Herbert has just mentioned, that in UNSOS, like for example, when we are issuing, even that it be goods or that it be assets for that matter, I mean, we are issuing towards the WBSC numbers. So we're not just issuing it just simply randomly. It is tied to a WBSC number. And it's something that is provided to us by the technical section because they are setting up their projects priorhand, because obviously these projects have to be funded by budget in order for us to be able to raise the requirement. So when their goods or services, our goods are coming from the warehouse, it'd be goods or consumption or assets, it is tied towards the WBSC number. And this is also applicable towards our trust fund, because we also have trust funds in which we deal with. So we are issuing goods towards internal orders, trust funds, or WBSE. Over.
Got it. Yes. So what I wanted to say was, I think it's the question comes down to, is the project a reoccurring, or is it a one such project that you wanted to sort of plan separately? Herbert is right. I mean, it's up to the entity how they want to plan it. Do they want, I mean, if building camps is part of regular operations, then I don't see the need to probably classify it as an EPP, rather manage it as continuous operation. I think that's where that's how we need to distinguish that part as well. In terms of Trust Fund, just want to quickly add, we had lots of discussions in terms of Trust Fund to remove the Trust Fund related consumption from the consumption data, because we didn't want to sort of again muddy the regular operations. But what we were unable to do so is that we were unable to identify a project related stocks in terms of Umoja. So for now, the issuance that you do in terms of a specific grant or a trust fund, it's also included in this consumption data. Later on, if Umoja has a way of separating out the project related stock or the project stock, then we can remove out the consumption that was done for a specific grant or a WBS element. Because what we realized by looking at the data was that the WBS elements were used across various it wasn't used consistently. We couldn't say this WBS element was related to this project. It was sort of all over the place. Unless we know specific WBS elements for an entity to exclude, which we can in the consumption data, we weren't able to clearly distinguish what to exclude and what to include.
Okay, if I may, Dinesha. So I think the discussion, I mean, there are some points that we will need to see down the road. So maybe for the sake of the explanation of the full content, maybe I can go ahead, and then we can continue this important business discussion maybe later, if it's okay with you. Okay, so I'm going to share now. I'm going to continue sharing the screen, and then let's see where we were. That was a very useful discussion and points, and I think it makes sense to bring them because we are starting to talk about entity priority projects, and the discussion will not finish today. So continuing with now this was more about the business, right? Now let's think a bit about how it's done in the solution, or how this is implemented in the solution, and how we will do it in the system. So there are basically three steps that need to be done to manage entity priority project demand plan. The first one is create what we call EPP header, which is the project information. This is done by the senior demand planner. So there are two types. We saw in the overview the different roles. So in this presentation, I'm going to explain, because there are two different types of roles that are taking action. The first step is creating EPP header. The second one is adding EPP items. So the first one is like we will see in the following slides, but it's basically like defining what is the project, what is its priority, for what entity, who is the owner, etc. The second one is adding EPP items. It's essentially, all this is manual, of course, and it's done by the planner. With the green, it's done by the local planner. In the orange, it's done by the senior planner. And then adding EPP items is basically entering product IDs for goods or services that the project will use, right? So this is also, that's why someone was asking about the bill of material, right? And then the last step is entering the EPP quantities. This is purely the demand plan for the project for the following, let's say, years. So 3 steps. The first one, inserting project details, creating what we call EPP header. All right, it has the title of the project, the description, start date and date, etc. I need to remove something about the business area because I think it changed. The second step, adding EPP items, is populating a table with product IDs for the required items, both goods or services. And the last step will be entering the quantities in the EPP template. So this is something new if you think about what you did for the last days. For the last day, you were only acting on a template and you were entering figures. Here, before you can actually enter your demand plan, you must create some additional data in the system, some master data actually. So these first two steps are something new to you that we will show after the presentation. Cyril will perform a demonstration, and then this is more, let's say the third step is similar to what you did for the last days. So what do we do in the EPP header? Is created as master data in the system. So today we will learn about how to manage and create master data in the solution. And this project header has project ID, project beneficiary, owning entity, project type, project start, project end, project priority, and key partner. So those are all fields that you will enter in the system. I don't want to spend much time on this because I think it's better once you see it in the system. And it looks really like a table, and you will enter it. Don't pay attention now about the values that you see there. This is only an example to give you the look and feel of the EPP header. So you are going to create one line in this table. You will create one line in this table specifying this information. If you have the role of the senior planner. Otherwise, you will have to wait for the senior planner to do it before you can enter the items. So this one is basically the definition of the project, like in general, using other words. Then the second step, EPP items. This would be entering a list of products that could be material service, indicating also the plant, the planning group, and if there is a funding element. There was a point about work breakdown structure elements, I guess, for assets under construction and other small projects with internal orders. So in this second step, we will list the products, material and services that will be used in the project. Again, it's a table where we will enter basically product IDs and that's it. And then eventually we will go to the template. So let me recap what we are going to do in the system. 3 steps. Create the project header, EPP header, add EPP items. And once we have this that is already saved, we will be able to go to the template to enter our plan, our demand. All right, is this clear? Is this 3-step process clear, Cyril? Can someone put some thumbs up, or if you want me, I can repeat. I think it's easy, but if you understand this slide, then when we go to the system, you will not be confused because Cyril will perform a demonstration for the first step, then we'll do something else for the second step, and then we'll go to the third step. So this simple slide needs to be very clear for you all. 3 steps: master data, and then template.
It's very clear. So many that maybe you don't need to do the demo.
It's good that you are also making jokes. Okay, thank you. So now we go finally to the entity priority project template. In this template, based on valuation of project outcome and timeline, it will allow to capture planner's forecast of required goods. Planner's forecast, you see, is not a statistical forecast for goods and services, which are not based on historical data. This is what we said before. And here, you will have to put both goods and services. All right, sorry for the icon because I didn't find any other better way to represent services if you don't like it. But goods and services, all right, everything there, as per the planner's forecast. And I think that's it. I think the presentation took longer than expected, as usual. But I think that's it. I think it's a good moment to go now to the system, unless there are other questions, to see these 3 steps. All right, Cyril, it's up to you to, if there is any other question we need to address, or we go to the demonstration.
David, if you would allow me a very quick one. Actually, what I'm going to ask you is not exactly related to what we discussed today, but this was, I mean, at the last session of yesterday, in the last few minutes, you mentioned about these, the best fit, which is a result of the, after deciding on whether it's a crossturn or exponential smoothing. At the same time, we also talked about the the tolerance level when it comes to the error measure, right? So is there any way that at this engineering stage, if anything that is based on the commodity, if you can set a tolerance or a flagging like, okay, this is not acceptable, something like that? Because when you have large volumes of data, some amount of flagging will help us, in the planning. When I said that, it's not across the board flagging for everything. Perhaps if you can set something like, depending on the commodity, like for example, Russian can have a very high margin of, low margin of error, low tolerance. And when it comes to fuel, it is medium, let's say. But for building materials, the tolerance can be much higher because it's a little bit, BOQ is a bit difficult to predict. Something like that, I mean, that will help at the planning stage, some kind of a flagging.
Thank you. Let us, if you don't mind, let us take note of this question, because I don't want to lose now the focus on from the EPP, but we can discuss it maybe after the session. And also, as we were saying a few days ago, we will have a summary as well, and we will go again through some of the exercises. So we will get to the point, we will discuss it. It's not that I don't want to open now the discussion, and it's a very interesting comment. It's also even a suggestion for improvement. So we take note of that, and we will address it in the, let's say, after the session, okay? Because I would like now to focus on EPP, so people keep the flow, if you don't mind. So
no problems. It's okay.
Okay. So remember now, we are going to the system, and we will see 3 steps. The 3 steps that we said: creating EPP header, adding EPP items, and then we will go to the template to enter the forecasted consumption. All right. So Cyril, over to you.
Okay. So can you see my screen? Everyone can see my screen now?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good. So this is the same scheme and operation you have been doing things. So to be able to perform the steps that David described, the EPP header, item, and quantity, you go exactly to the IBP, and then you open the tool. So I think you realize that you are not the only one facing sometime performance issue. It also take a couple of seconds, for us. Good. Yeah, so while you're waiting, okay, now you're there. So while you're waiting, just remember also the EPP could be good, all right? And it could also be services, right? This is also really important to mention, because as we say, you account 80% for the services, in terms of planning. So it's important to understand that, you can actually plan also your domain for services using EPP. So now the first step. So you will log into ACP, haven't done it. So the environment that you're using is training 24. Using my United ID as usual. Our environment is loaded, and also the connection also established, to be able to have our solution clear and ready. Now, this is where you are. Good. So the first step, how do you create the EPP project header? Very easy. Follow me. You go to here, you will see this button, Master Data Workbook. So if you click here, you can create one master data. All right. Everyone can still see my screen. You just go in the button of master data, you create master data, right? So on the master data type, you will see here, there's a drop-down list. You look for EPP project header. You select that one. And very important, there's a button here, there's a tick. Say edit. Don't forget to click it, right? Because if you don't click to edit, you will not be able to properly modify your data, right? So if you click to edit, you go to, and then OK. So you'll have this message, but just ignore the message. It's a system message. And then you will have an Excel sheet that will allow you to enter your EPP either item, right? So you can see here, I already entered a couple of them. I can still do, you can do SVG, the EPP product ID, you can say SVG test, for instance. It's done by, you see, let's say, Valentina Barker. This time, CM was me when I was doing the test, and then it's owned by the UCS. Let's focus still on healthcare campaign. We'll just put the project type, healthcare, and then you have to enter also the beginning, the starting date, and then the end date of the project, right? So it will be, say 01, say 06 still, to make it easier. To, let's say 31st July. Project priority and key partner, they are also data attribute. If you have them, you can enter, otherwise, that's fine. And once you enter all your line item header or no, all your line header of your project, we just go to save, right? And then you can put a comment to endorse your savings. So we can put this is a test. So once you save, you will have a notification message that will show you if the line of the header were properly entered. So in other words, if you have made a mistake or you enter, for example, a date that is not valid, or you enter a project beneficiary that is not valid, the system will show you, in the next screen, the status of your data, right? It will tell you, for example, the data that you enter was wrong, one line was wrong, or two line was wrong, or three line were wrong as well. So you can see here, easily, I enter only one line, and then in this line you can see total number of record 1, the number of records that were changed, meaning the record that I enter 1, and the number of rejected records 0. So that means I enter all the project header data correctly. So to be able to see, you can either choose not to download the report or download the report. Let's download the report, and you will see quickly how the report looks like. See, you will have here your report. This is just an Excel sheet, IBP message. It show you exactly the data that were imported and all the elements that you have entered. Is it clear so far? Very easy. Let me recap. You go to Master Data Workbook. You create 1, workbook sheet. You go again to master data type. You select the corresponding master data type with this project header. Always remember to click edit and then OK. Simple. So this is the first step to create your project header. So if this is fine, you can proceed to the second step, which is creating the project item. David, Valentina, any question so far?
So far, so good.
Okay, excellent. So as David mentioned, EPP is 3-step. You already performed the first one, so let's go to the second one. The second one is exactly the same way you are doing the project header, but the only difference now, you have to select the project item, right? Exactly the same thing. We create new one. Master data type. Now, what are you going to select? The project item. Remember, the first time was the project header. Now it's the project item. All right. We again click edit, so you will be able to enter the data you want and modify it eventually later. Okay. And then as you see in the system, you will see if you already have the data that were entered in the past or belonging to other plant, you can see them. Otherwise, you can enter your own data. Pretty much. I don't have a particular product ID here, but let's create one. You will see. Maybe 1435. I'm not sure if it's there, but let's see. You will understand the principle. The principle is to make you see how you enter those data, right? And then you will see later in the equipment in the EPP template how those data appear and how you can modify them. In other words, how you can add the quantity that you want. So remember always, you have this attribute EPP helper is default to 1. So you always, normally it should default to 1, but if it's not 1, you will have to enter it. And then the internal order and WBSE element, Gisela mentioned about it. Those are the founding elements that you have, so you can enter them when you're dealing with asset under construction, for example. And maybe this is also something else. Another attribute that you can add here is also the trust fund, because you're saying also this is another funding element that you have in your different mission. So I think for the niche I mentioned and the rest, this is something that maybe you can consider adding another data attribute at the item level, on the trust fund part. So once you have done it, same thing, you click on saving, change, you add a comment, test 2, and then you save. Exactly the same thing as we had in the project header, the message showing us the status of the data that we have entered. You also have here now the same status record. So you have entered one records, it was properly endorsed, and then you can download the full report to make sure that what you have entered were correct. So pretty much this is the report might be downloaded here, I think. Yes, exactly. So as you can see, properly done. So these are the two main steps that you have to do before going to the EPP template. So now once you set up your header, your project header, when you enter your project item, your related funding element, now you have to go in the templates to enter your EPP quantity. This is really important. How you do that is exactly the same thing that you're doing since when you set up your historical data, when you review your link things and so forth. So in order to do that, again, you just go here on the new view. As you were doing before, this is not something new for you. It's clear already. And then you select the appropriate template. Here, the template is EPP. So you can choose a period of 14 or 25 periods. Usually what I do, instead of selecting the date, you can just modify it from the go here. So you'll have an estimated period of 20, right? Let's say in June, 24 months or 25 months. Yeah. And of course, to be able to restrict the amount of data you're looking for, you can go to filter, attributes, and no, this is the plan, just the plan. I will use the IL20.
The mistake is with the plant. There is a space, extra space in plant.
Yes,
that's true. Thanks, Syed. Excellent. This is the good things also here. Pretty much what you do visually when you have a plan or any attributes, if you put a wrong value that is not stored in the system, it will give you an error. So I think that was thing. Let's start back again. So IL20, and then you are good. So we can add, let's say, two of the product that you were looking for. Let's say product ID that we added previously.
Cyril?
Yes.
Maybe here it's a good example also to filter by the project ID, right? By the project description.
Exactly. So let's do this. Let me add just the product ID, few product ID, right? And then you will add also the project description. Is it fine?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So we can add what's the element that we can have 29, I think. 34. And I will try another one here on the 50. I'm just selecting the product ID that I'm sure you have, available or you have entered already at the line item, right? And David was suggesting to put the project description. So pretty much instead of going to the drop down and looking particularly, you can start typing, the first letter or the first 3 or 4 letter, and then you give you some of the suggestion. So David, you were talking about project beneficiary or David?
Description.
Sorry, yes, Cyril, you can put description or project. What I meant is project, right? Okay. You want to show all the items that are within your project.
Yeah, so let's say.
So project, I think it's called project ID, actually, no? The name of the field.
Yes, I think, yeah, that's correct. No, so I keep putting project product ID.
Project.
It's EPP product ID, yes. I believe it's EPP product ID. Let me try for EPP. You have it already.
So if you enter EPP, right, you will get them, no?
No. Okay. Good. And then that was. I think I don't remember exactly. Let me find it.
Mm-hmm. So while Cyril is checking that.
Okay. Yes, I think if I recall,
that was the beneficiary, Cyril. I think it's better. Yeah. And there you have it. You have your train test, for example, or.
Let's put everything here.
Yeah. So the idea here, just to what Cyril is entering, is that you define the project, you define the products, right? And then when you go to the template, you want to show all the products that you entered as items to do your plan, right? So I would if I were a planner, I would filter by project, EPP project ID to get all the products. or as Cyril is doing, if you are let's say in charge of a particular set of products, you can filter by your product. But it's good to have all the projects that you are managing if you are going to enter the demand, right?
Exactly. So pretty much what I'm trying to show you is to reflect on the template of EPP. What is exactly the line item, project item that I've added, right? So here you can see all the different products, right? And then now what you can see, depending of the month that you want to do, you can enter your demand. Let's say I will do it randomly, yeah? Pretty much for the first product, I will go maybe in March 2021, and then I will enter, let's say 400, right? Quantity. You'll see it turned into blue. So that means it was handled if you do it in a different months, like say maybe April or May. The quantity turn into blue. So pretty much after doing that, when you save it, it will be taken into account in the final calculation and formulation of the gross demand. All right, so this is pretty much what you do to include the EPP demand or additional demand into your gross demand formulation. So remember, 3-step, easy. You set up the project header first, and then you enter the project item, and then later you enter the EPP quantity related to your project ID, your product IDs, and so forth, right? So in the nutshell, those are only the steps. And of course, when all this thing is done, you'll have to save your data, enter the reason code. I think you've seen it already during the previous demo, and also during the practice of your exercise. You can enter anything, let's say entity change, and test 3. Et voila. If you go back, you will see, right, that your the quantity that you have entered are taking into consideration, right? It was March 2021, 400 is there. I believe it was May as well, 2021, 200, and it's there, right? And of course, you will see later when you will also add the equipment as additional demand. And then later when you will see the gross demand formulation, the final one, you will see how all these additional element, EPP and equipment was taken into consideration while formulating the demand. So this is in essence what you do to add EPP. Simple. So in other words, what I did, I would just retranslate in the system, in the demo, what exactly David was explaining. Any question?
Thank you, Cyril. About the demonstration, yeah, someone has a question?
I have, Suleiman. Just for Cyril, couple of observations. I was able to follow you as you were doing, but I noticed that in template there is no, for example, you can enter any product ID, even the wrong ID. Product type, it's free text. So I'm interested in integration of how certain elements, such as project type that has defined lookup list, is imposed. Another observation, I didn't see anything that how you link this one to project already established in the system, because here you are putting just demand, but you have to connect this one to the existing project in Umoja, word break structure, that part. And also what I observe, something that maybe require clarification. If we are talking about material, that is clear, you need to enter quantity. But if you are talking about service, what you will enter? Just amount, or you will, for example, if something is already in the catalog, has a unit of measure, let's say, maintenance number of hours, you will put quantity there, or you will just continue what we had with historical information, you will just put value. I think those are small things maybe that will provide more clarity. Thank you.
So yes, thank you very much. This is really valid. Maybe I will let Denisha answer on the service part. But I think I will assume, you know, when you set up the project item, if it's a service, is where you have to put, you know, to capture the element properly. Denisha, is it?
Yes, so I think it goes back to the point that was made, I think the second day. For services, the only services that come in quantity fund right now is fuel. Everything else, we've marked it as value, given the quality of service data. So if you're entering service IDs in here, it would be based on value. But the idea behind it is, Suleiman, is that once the data matures and data improves, we can just simply switch services to be quantity. But for now, you would enter value. And I mean, there's no way to enter a wrong product ID here. You can either select and the system will validate. You can never enter a wrong product ID in terms of, this is not like the current global acquisition planning tool where you can randomly enter like text items. What you can enter is what resides in the system as a PID.
Just to couple the word with the test, Denisha. So I was just entering something that is different from the product ID.
There was another question that
Sorry,
maybe.
Yeah, if you can tell me, David, I didn't necessarily write down the question.
Yeah, no problem. So the second question, Cyril, if you can close this window, I think Suleiman was referring to the moment where you are creating project header, and the project type is a free text. Yeah, that's true, but there is an integrity check by the system. So if you don't enter one of the values of the project type that are valid, the system will give you an error. If you remember, I shared in my presentation, I shared the list of project types. So in the project header, if you open Cyril the table, even though it's a free text when creating, if you don't enter one of the values from the list, the system will not let you save.
Exactly. This is what I wanted to say. So in fact, I'm typing. You could, instead of typing, you could just select. I'm typing to be able to find, you know, quickly the value that I'm looking for. So let's say if I type something starting with S, it will give me the available value on S. But if I want to type, for example, SVG, and then I put, you know, enter, it will not work.
But Cyril, this is clear in these lookups. But when you go to the Excel table, there you can do modification. At least I was able to do.
Yeah.
But then it was one question about how do we, because we know that planning, when it comes to project, is small portion that we are doing here on a site. But mainly project planning takes place in Umoja with the well-established project, work break structure, and so on and so on. And then my question was how integration, how do we here make these connections between demand and specific project that has a specific ID in Umoja, structure, and so on, how this integration between planning and project management, at least transactional part that takes place in Umoja, is connected.
Right now, there's no connection between the project systems that's currently in ECC or the planned as part of the SPPM, the project management tool. The idea is eventually, I think that's the long-term vision of Umoja, is that projects then would eventually be planned in the SPPM tool and the data would feed into IBP as a project that was already created. But unfortunately, Suli, that project is still a work in progress and there is no set deadline per se as to when that will be done. So that integration piece is right now, we cannot confirm as to when it will occur even, and we don't even know. We've reached out several times, but we don't even know at this point what the solution for SPPM looks like. So once that project matures along, we can eventually talk about some integration, but as of now, it's not something that's planned. So in the absence of not having that integration and still wanting the ability to capture the demand related to projects, that's why this piece was introduced.
Thank you, Danisha, for clarification. But I think this is one of critical point because Herbert mentioned before that if we have historical transaction mix with the project and not project, and then if they come all together as project history, demand history, it will be really confusing if we are not able to make integration that will clearly identify what project meaning that has end and beginning and the end, so that we do in this template, and what is the rest reoccurring demand. I think that is integration point is critical, and maybe that requires a little bit more discussion then.
Yeah,
because
so
without that integration, we will not be able to do separation.
only separation you'd be able to do is in terms of the EPP that you enter here. So the system has the capability to remove it from the consumption data. But anything that's classified as a project and handled as a project, either in the project systems or on the future SPPM tool, that I agree with you, until that integration is done, we won't be able to necessarily automatically separate anything out. But unfortunately, because that project is also on its design phase, we are not able to discuss any integration at this point.
Thank you, Ganesh.
David, I have a question, and Miss Isaac.
Yeah, 1 second, because I think there was one point from Sully that we didn't reply yet. Cyril, could you go to the other table, the one for EPP header? I think that's an important question for everybody to understand, an important point.
So yeah, I think I'm the EPP header. All right.
No, this is items, right? Where you have the product IDs. So
you're looking okay.
Yeah.
You're looking at the header.
Cyril, in this.
Now, yeah, this one, yeah. So this is what I'm coming. So if you have, for example, a project type, right? In the project type, it's a free text, right? But this doesn't mean that the system will accept anything that you write there, Sully. If you,
in my case, it's accepted.
No, but when you click on save, if you put whatever you want, when you will click on save, the system will return an error. And so you will not be able, so there is reference data integrity check. So if you put whatever there, when you click on save, the system will return error. And then if you go to the detail of the error, it will tell you project type, validity change, validity check failed or something. So you will get an error. Okay, you see? Number of rejected records. So if you open the report, Cyril, because that's useful for everybody, I will always recommend you to download the full report or the error report as you want.
So just to show exactly where the error comes from. So that's why I was doing that.
So this error report opens as a different sheet, and then you see it's telling you data integration started, and then there is a message. Well, the error should be there. I mean, now this is the error report, so I cannot read it. Warning, master data import in foreign key check failed. Exactly. The second line is telling you project type. You see, you go to the second message, Cyril, in this table. It's there. The message text on the second line is telling master data import in foreign key failed because project type. All right. So even though you can see that it's a free text, there is integrity foreign key check. Right. That was pending to be replaced. So they cannot enter. I mean, they cannot save anything. Users cannot save anything they want. Now there was another question. Sorry to keep you. I think it's Isaac, right?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Shall we go to the table after we added the project quantities and then we had the aggregate?
To what table? So the sequence is you enter project header,
this
then
one,
you enter product?
Yes, this table. Now here we are, we have the aggregate of the gross demand and then the EPP. And at a point we realized that he was even struggling to see where he added what.
Okay, yeah, so 1 second, 1 second.
My question now, from this screen, can you run a report to give you only the quantities for the EPP?
this is the confusion, and then I was about to say it before before you asked the question. When Cyril opened this, when Cyril opened EPP, there were some numbers, but this is not the forecasting. When you create a project, and you will do it in the exercise, and you will go to this EPP demand, the template will be empty. This is only the EPP demand. You don't see anything here not related to EPP. So when you will do the exercise, even though you did the forecast, even if the product ID could be the same, right? You are seeing here the EPP demand, right, Casper? Casper, are you there? Dinesha, could you confirm that?
Yes, David, I think. It's only the EPP demand.
Sorry, I'm here. What was the question again?
So the
I
point
think
is that
it's actually EPP input in the sheet. It's not the other global plan, yeah.
Exactly. So maybe you got confused because you saw some numbers when Cyril opened, because this was a project that was already created. So when you create a brand new project, it's all empty. So you are only seeing EPP demand plan.
Yeah, and it's like the number, I just took them randomly, but of course, if you put in the particular month a quantity, you'll remember exactly what you are putting. So when you will save, you save to see if the number that you have entered was endorsed and properly accounted for in the system. It's only when this thing is endorsed and saved that it will go later with the equipment additional demand to complement the formulation of the final gross.
So in other words, you have a statistical forecast template with one portion of the gross demand, EPP template with the portion related to the projects, and we will see another template tomorrow. Okay, so they are not yet mixed. To see them all together, we will have to go to another template called gross demand.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your input. If you don't have any other question, David, you have the floor to show the master data. Oh,
okay,
Valentina.
Sorry, sorry. Yes, there is a question from Gisela. I think related to this, to what we are seeing on the screen. She's asking if we have the ability to do mass upload, I guess upload of product ID. So it's not this what we are seeing, but the sheets where we have to upload the product ID related to the EPP. Is correct, Gisela? Gisela?
Yes, that's correct. But it would also apply to here, because obviously in this area you would put in the quantities as well. So I think it's in both areas. Over.
So if I may.
Yes, sure.
Okay. So when you go to the second table to add the items, you are working with a table. So if you have a list of product IDs, you can just add them there in a batch and then save them. You are managing the spreadsheet, right? And then they will all appear on the template. Is that replying to your question? You don't need to enter one by one and save them. You just work on the table, you put them all, and then you save.
I think she's referring to the second step of the process, David, when you have to create the PID, the second, not this one.
Exactly, on the second one. So if you can open the EPP items table, Cyril.
Yeah.
So
Cyril,
I think,
would you please open the EPP items table, not the template, the table.
Workbook, yeah.
Master data, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think she's referring to that. If you have more than one PID that you have to create, can you do a mass?
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. It's only an Excel and a spreadsheet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you come here, if you have a list of products, you can add them all. So you are working with the table, and then you save. So you don't need to enter one by one. Of course, you have to make sure that you put the right project ID, but of course you can manage them, but you don't have to go one by one. Is that replying to your question, Gisela?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay.
By the way, I did not see assistant there, the planning group from South Sudan here.
Okay. We will discuss planning groups later. Okay, so I think yeah, I think we are good to go to master data, but the master data presentation should take like 15 minutes. Okay, so yeah, we are good. I don't have. I wanted to give you a break, but I think we don't have time for breaks now.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it will be the continuity pretty much of this setting up of element. So yeah, thanks.
Okay, you will have the break after we finish the session. All right, so let me go and share my screen. So what are we doing now? Okay, let me recap. So what Cyril explained was about the EPP. Now we are going to change a bit the topic. So, but in order to capture the project demand, we have two steps. The first two are master data related. The last one is working on the EPP template. So now that we already introduced to you to the master data workbook, we want to show to you other tables that are important in the master data, and you will get also an exercise about it. So I'm going to show to you how to check important master data for your planning business, okay? And then I will give you some other advice as of how to open different master data in one Excel and etc. Okay, this is the purpose of the demonstration I'm going to do. You will receive two exercises today, one for EPP and one for master data. If you are not able to complete them all, don't worry, because we will have some extra time to do it. So I'm going to share my screen. Gisela's hand is up, so I don't know if it's still remaining, but I'm going to go ahead unless you tell me different.
No, go ahead. I'll ask my question after.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to, I hope you can see my screen. This portion of the presentation is going to be, I think, easy. Oh, I got logged out. So 1 second. Please, I'm logging. I think I was logged out because of the inactivity. So again, I go into utilities, EPP Dev, our training environment. So remember, as I'm opening, as I said before, in EPP, you have to act in two different sides of the solution. On the master data portion, and then on the template with the key figures. So what is this? Signing out. So on the master data, we are managing the project header, and we are also managing the EPP items, but it's not all this what we want to manage. Let me see, let me open again, otherwise I will open from my spreadsheet. Okay, 1 second. Maybe Gisela, is not a bad idea if you ask your question while I'm opening it, because it's taking me a bit of time. So if there is any other question, then you can help me to open the system, because it's giving me a bit of problem now.
I don't know if it was addressed, maybe I didn't pay attention when I was demonstrating. Gisela is asking if the system does differentiate item issue from cost recovery.
It actually goes back, if I may just elaborate a little bit on that. It actually goes back to the beginning of the training, where it identified from where the sources are coming from. So in other words, the goods issuances. So in this particular, sorry?
The question, your question is then related to historical consumption, right? It's not
correct. Correct. Oh. So does this also take into account cost recovery?
I think it's taking into account mainly movement types, right? So
yes,
good receipt.
We are not separating based on any cost recovery funding or the funds, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Gisela, that for cost recovery, you use a special fund. That's the only difference. There's not necessarily any other difference. So, I mean, each entity, because that goes back to, I think, what I was trying to say in terms of the excluding the consumption related to trust fund, we are unable to distinguish right now at this point in time to say for UNSOS, these are the cost recovery funds, or for like another regional office away from headquarters, this is a trust fund or a cost recovery fund. If you have a specific list, you can give it to us and we can look at the possibility of excluding that consumption data.
Okay.
So that's something we can put it as a variable in the interface for the entities.
Okay, very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I already connected. So
there's also a comment, I think, from Michael. Michael is talking about price. Maybe this is something that you can,
yeah,
do later, because you will have a session on dollarization that will address, I believe, somehow your question.
Absolutely. So yeah, we will touch prices in a different session because it's related to dollarization. What I want to show now, it's some of the most important tables that we are managing also in master data. Okay, one of them, if you can see, I think you can see my screen, right? One of them is, this is also your exercise, so you will go through it later. Unit of measure conversion factor for unit of measure, sublocation product, UNSPC hierarchy, currency, and product plant. And then here I will take advantage of product plant to explain something about segmentation that was pending yesterday. So first I want to show to you the currency is one of these tables that we have in master data. So as we did before, remember, to open template, you go here on the left top and left corner. When we are talking about master data, you have to come here to this area, as Cyril explained. So don't get confused. With EPP, you came here first and then you went here. Now for the rest of master data, we will always work from this icon. So we click on master data workbook. I will click on create. I hope the noise from my stomach didn't you didn't hear it. I'm a bit starving today. So this is the table. This is the first view for master data, as Cyril explained. But here we have a lot of different tables. I typically remove common filter from here to see better the screen. And then here we are loading master data. In the master data type, there is a lookup list with all the tables that we manage in the system. So I hope you are familiar with the concept of master data, because we are using it also in ECC and in Umoja for a long time. So this master data is reference data that is used in the system. For example, if you come here to master data and you go to currency, you will see all the currencies that the system is managing. So what I did was to open in master data workbook, I selected currency. There you go. Those are all your currencies. So if you want to double check that if your currencies are there, you can simply filter, because this is a table. Okay, so you can come here and filter by, for example, euro. So I can see that euro is there as a currency. Right? This table, you should not be modifying it. I don't think even you have access to it. But this is, the read-only view.
David, we cannot see your screen.
Okay, sorry. So could you please, the rest of you, confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, we can see.
Okay.
Maybe I will stop sharing and share again in case it helps you, Mala, because sometimes with the Teams. Okay, so I'm sharing again. Hopefully it's helping. So this is the table for currency, for example. Now we have other tables that are that we are suggesting in the exercise that you can check apart from currency. For example, we are asking you to go to the UNSPC hierarchy. That is the hierarchy for the products with their commodities and families and etc. So to open the full hierarchy of material IDs, and this is very useful, I think, if you want to see what products fall under what commodity, etc. Again, you go to master data workbook. You click on edit in this case, for example, and we are going to select a different table. For these checks, you don't need to click on edit because it's only read-only access. And instead of currency, we look for a different table. right? I said UNSPC hierarchy. I think that the acronym might have an extra letter there, but this is what we want to check. And we'll click on OK. So what you see here is the full list of commodity. This is the hierarchy. So you see so the hierarchy itself. So how the commodities are belonging to classes and how they are related also to families. So sorry, I said that you can see also here product IDs, but not for product IDs. We have to go to a different table. But this is the hierarchy. So once you have the commodity, you will know to what class it belongs and to what family, etc. And then from here is where the system is getting all the descriptions. Right? This is related to the first day presentation when Cyril was explaining the UNSPSC hierarchy. So it's here in the system for you to check if you want. We have other tables that we want you to check in the exercise. For example, sublocation product. And then in this sublocation product table, since it's so long, the system will give you a message that I think is interesting also for you to understand. What I'm saying, by the way, I'm just loading the master data tables one by one because I want to explain the things in a particular sequence. But you can also open several tables here without closing different. So imagine that you want to keep the UNSP hierarchy, but you also want to see product sublocation, for example. Now, let me find it. So we have product sublocation or product plan. Let me see what we are asking you to do in the exercise so I don't go somewhere else. Sorry, sublocation product, yeah. So the name of the table is different. Sublocation product. And then we are going to open this one. But if the list of items is too long, the system will tell us, will give us a message. Will tell us that it cannot load all of them in one shot. Now we are very lucky because this one didn't, I mean, maybe because it's a training environment, doesn't have so many items, or maybe it's loading them all. In this product sublocation table, there is something important that you can see, and it's the time series classification for your history of this particular sublocation. So if we filter by a particular sublocation or a set of sublocation, we can see how the consumption for this product, what products have consumption in this sublocation, for example. So you see in this particular sublocation in the system, we have historical data for these products and services. And here you can also see the time series classification for your entity. So I think as planners, using master data read-only access, it can give you good reports of what you are managing, and it will give you maybe a better understanding of what you want to, analyze. Okay. Another table that we wanted to show, and it's an important one, and is the one to end. Hopefully, when you will start using this, you will get more familiar, and maybe next week we will show you more advanced functionalities of this, let's say, part. But for the time being, I want you to focus on what is the mechanism. You will have master data. You choose a table, and then you can filter by the data that you are interested in. All right. I don't want to make it more complex at the moment. So I know some of you are suggesting to show some nice features, but I would prefer to wait a bit before showing that. So yeah, we have another one for the unit of measure conversion that we will be checking. Okay, let me show this one instead. Now this one is another important table. You have it in the exercise. So the purpose of this table is basically to help the system to make conversions from one unit of measure to another one. So I had one example, one good example that I can even show from the exercise, which is 14182. So if I filter by that product, or this one is in a different environment. So yeah, you will have to do it for one of the products that you got in your exercise assigned to you. But basically, this is used by the system to convert different units. So when it's each, now in this training environment, I think we only have one as a conversion factor. But when you will go to the other environment with production data, you might have here the relation between boxes and bottles, or pallets and some boxes, etc. Okay, it would be relating the different units of measures. Now, the purpose of the demonstration, is it clear? The point is, for all the master data you got here, you come here and you choose the type of master data you want to analyze, right? So you have different tables that are important. We are suggesting the most important ones in the exercises. And now I want to show you another one, which is very relevant for you, which is called product plant. And then I will show you something called what we call the segmentation lock. This is the message I was referring to. If when you are running master data and you are displaying, you get this message, the system has cut off the number of records at 10,000. Use a more restrictive filter to specify. So it's telling you, okay, you are going beyond my capacity. So please filter before, because I cannot show you more than 10,000, whatever. Okay, so let me filter. This is the table that will show you your products and how they are classified, not classified, but how the segmentation went for your mission. So you will typically run this table for your entity. So if I click on edit and I select product plant, I will need to enter a filter now. And the filter is entered like this, typically in this way. So we select plant and let me put IL20. But notice that this is done at the master data level. Now I see all the products for this plant, IL20. Some of them have an ABC code. So let me remove the ones that are blank. This is purely Excel, right? So all the functionalities that you know from Excel spreadsheet, you can use it. Now I see all the products that for this plant had some consumption history, and then the system classified them as A, V, or C. I'm going even to sort. So the products classified as A, they are very important. They are the most important for the entity. So you would be starting your planning from the A products. And then according to the business reality that you have, some of you already pointed out that if we do this in production, most of them will be services, or the main one would be services. That's still okay, because it will help you to prioritize, right? And what we have to say on this table, apart from the importance of having all your products and the ABC code, is that yesterday there was a question. I'm not sure if it was Elizabeth, but also Casper wanted me to mention this. If in the mission, apart from the consumption information, you might understand that some products are strategically important. So they, regardless of their historical consumption, you might consider that this product should be classified as an A because it's important. This is something that happened. It happened in Spain when we started with this virus crisis. We ran out of stock, and then the president said, oh, the problem we had is that masks were not considered as a strategic product. So now, if we consider that masks, regardless of their historical consumption, are a strategic product and are critical for the, let's say, operations in the entity, we can set a lock on this particular product and say, this is A, right? Casper, you can jump in now if you want, because you are more familiar with this process. So of course, we have to open this in edit view, and maybe I forgot to do that. So let me do it properly so you see it in green. So product plant, we check edit, right? So I will be able to edit. Casper, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, David, I can hear you. So it works a little bit different. So whenever the ABC code is selected, so let's say it's a B, and you want to change it to an A,
okay,
and you want to lock it. So you want to overwrite the system, or even if you want to have an item that is already an A, you want to have it as an A always.
okay.
Then you need to still use column E, where it says ABC code. There you enter the code that you want. So let's say you want to keep this one, line 10, as an A.
Yes.
And you go to the F column and you press and you enter an X. So in order to lock it, yes, this is the way you lock it. This way, every time that the system is run, the segmentation, it will neglect this item to overwrite it to the classification and leave it as A.
Okay. So then in the same way, if we go to a product that has been classified as C or as B, and we want always to be an A, we have to edit the classification and then lock it.
Exactly, correct.
Okay, thank you, because I got confused with that. All right, so, but this is done at master data level. So I would say, if I were you, there are some tables that are very important, and you will check them in the, okay, sorry, before closing this thing, after you edit, we need to save the changes, right? We have to go here and save the changes. Okay, and this will be saved on the master data that you have access to, right? So, and then we say, you will justify what you're changing, this non-strategic product, something, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so just to recap, because we are finishing, so let me even stop sharing now, because we are closing the session. And I see a lot of hands raised. So the idea is, you have the templates that you have been loading on the system, and you are already familiar with that. Today, you are going to be acting mostly on the master data side. So the exercise that you will receive to do it today or tomorrow morning are more related to master data. Important there is to get familiar with the key tables, right? And one of the most important tables for you would be the product plan table, or I think it's called product plan table, where you can filter by your entity and you see all the products that you have been consuming. And you have also segmentation there, and you have the important log as well. But the other tables are also important for you, at least to see them and understand them. Okay. Now I see a lot of hands, so maybe let's go one by one. So Gisela.
Yes, sorry, I just had a follow-on question to what Dinesha was talking to about earlier, and what concerns the sorry, just gathering my thoughts here.
Okay.
It's on the amount types. She stated that the gross demand, or the historical consumption, is actually being done on amount types. Correct?
Why are you not here?
So gross demand for materials is done at quantity, and apart from fuel, all the other services is done based on value.
Yes, but you're looking at movement types, correct? It's being the movement types.
Yes, you're right, Gisela. Just to clarify that, so for consumption data, we are based on a set of movement types. We are bringing in the consumption data, and for services, based on the receipt of service entry sheet, is where we are bringing in the consumption data.
Okay, so in now, if I go into EPP, then that means I'm actually double counting, because if I have already gotten this information from the movement type in the initial, like historical side of the equation, now I'm going into EPP and actually manually entering this information yet again, because if you're looking at movement type, it is deriving from the WBSC numbers that are being, issued against. So I'm double dipping here.
So that if you recall, the first point that I made was that the first year go live, say we go live in July, and we bring in that consumption data, and we also try to enter EPP data. At that point, because the system doesn't have that data source, at that point you are. But say come next year, July, you've already entered some EPP and the consumption data also flows in from ECC. We are going to introduce a capability to remove that component of EPP related from the consumption data, at least, or to show the planner separately. But this is based on what was entered as EPP demand in DPSNP. We will remove it. So not based on the true consumption data, but at least this way you're able to see out of the consumption data, maybe 10% was EPP and maybe 90% was consumption data. That capability, we can bring it in starting the second year, you'll be able to see it. But I think I really want to go back to my earlier point as well, is that if you have by your plant some elements that you want to outright exclude as consumption data, do let us know though. I hope I answered your question, Gisela.
Yes, I still feel that I'm double dipping, so that's why I'll
What we can do is maybe I think once we have the working sessions, we can show what we sort of mean by that. Not that you're double dipping. Sorry, David, please.
Dinesha, maybe a point that I'm not sure if you mentioned. When we are getting the consumption history from production, are we importing as well consumption that is linked to work breakdown structure elements and consumption that are linked to internal orders like projects?
We are.
Yes.
So we looked into the possibility of excluding, but we, like I said, we couldn't find out for each entity what was an element to exclude or include it. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. We can include that, saying if ANSOS says these are the two funds that are cost recovery for us, don't bring this into IBP as consumption data, we can do that.
Okay. All right, so maybe that's one of the points to discuss next week while we are doing the practice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
Giovanni?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Sayed, there were other hands. Giovanni? Do you have a question or comment? Giovanni Ferraro? Okay, so let's go then to Sayed.
Yeah, I think my question partially is already answered by Dinesha. My question was also related to the EPP materials, because EPP materials are going to go to the consumption eventually this year. So let's say, you know, so it will form part of the statistical forecast later on. So which means that, you know, the tendency is there that, you know, the bad data is going to come to the consumption. So there will be abnormal spikes in that. So now just add to that, you know, the earlier question that during the data cleansing, will these abnormal spikes, which is coming as a result of the EPP materials, will they be cleansed first?
So I don't know if you're asking Dinesh or myself, but if the spikes will be
spikes coming as a result, spikes coming as a result of EPP materials, will they be cleansed at the time of data forecasting?
They are considered as outliers, right? So the system
outliers and spikes, yeah, they are abnormal spikes, yeah, because they are not essentially, they are not part of our the trend or the forecast. Actually, they should not be. So my question is that, you know, adding to whatever the earlier question, that if they will be removed.
So if it's a real outlier, it would be removed. But the idea of that, the functionality that we are still keeping hold and not implemented, the idea of separating the EPP demand out of the consumption data, if once we implement that, then it won't necessarily be allowed or left alone to be done by this automatic cleansing. At least it would be separated out based on the fact that you've entered an EPP demand last year. Come the current year, I'm already taking that out as EPP demand and not showing it as consumption data.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense, Said?
Yeah, I mean, there should be somewhere that data cleansing should take that into account, because it can really affect the entire forecasting actually, if we don't take that into account.
Okay, so the one thing I want to say is that all this master data, I think Steve has asked this question, is that they're all directly coming from ECC, the product master data, the price, the customer, the sub-location. It's not something that we are manually maintaining. There's an automatic interface from ECC that runs.
Okay. All right, thank you, Dinesh and Sayed. And last question, it's already 2:05, but Suli, you have a comment?
Just following on what I mentioned previously, but also what was currently discussed during this session. There is a lot of confusion. What is recurring demand? What is a project? What is cost recovery? And I'm just referring to my previous comments. Is there possibility from this system that aggregate everything on quantity and value to have all these transactions to users, so before they go for data cleansing, that they can have this one in Excel table and see, okay, here I have project, I have recovery, I have all these things, so that they can get a better idea from where all this transaction comes, and then those spikes and anomalies can be easily detected analyzing this data. So my question is, given circumstances that we are in the tool seeing only quantity for material and value for service, is there possibility that this historical consumption is basically exported or analyzed in its entire scope of information, so that user can say, oh, this is project, this is cost recovery, so that they can have this in their mind once they make decision, that they make decision knowing that basically this is included or this is excluded. Or maybe they can come back and say, it is our suggestion for this particular entity to do such and such, so that we have this separation. So that is my question. I think that will be very useful, because obviously historical consumption is very mixed bag, that I think having such information will be beneficial to user.
Yeah, thank you, Suli, so we take note of that. This is more a point for improvement and discussion of the team. So I think they will take into consideration, and then in the following sessions we will discuss. I would not open now the floor because it's already 2:07. So Himanshu is about to appear to tell me that it's late. So thank you so much. I think that's another point to be tracked. I think Cyril is also tracking that for our issue law. Yeah.
Thank you, David. There's a lot of comments, and I believe a couple of points need to be taken on the side, to discuss further, and then maybe refine. I'm capturing them, and then Denisha also address a couple of them. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about further.
Okay, so we will continue. So that's why we are also planning to extend the sessions, right? So over to you,
last words.
Well, last words. Yeah.
No, I think I just wanted to reconfirm what we said yesterday, that we will extend, and the email communication will be sent out today to everyone extending this. We are targeting 3 additional days of exercise hands-on, but divided into smaller groups, so we can give a bit more attention to individuals and let you ask questions. And actually, one of the main purpose of this whole exercise is to capture the feedback. So we will go through that, and then we'll have a day of recap collectively and address anything that is still remaining, maybe through parking lot, and then finally have a dedicated time for you to go through the assessment. So, so all that information will be sent out by the deployment team shortly, and we hope that you guys can continue. I know it's 2 hours. There's a lot of information flowing. I'm looking at the chat, some really good interactions happening. So hopefully you can still maintain your commitment to it and your focus. So thank you.
Thank you. And then have a good lunch or evening or morning, wherever you are.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Goodbye. See you tomorrow.
Okay, bye. See you tomorrow.